Welcome to this video giving additional insights on the portfolio construction and risk management book. First of all, I want to say that I'm really happy for all the people who are excited to learn about this content. This is something that really motivates me to do a good job. There are of course also people who absolutely hate it. And this is mostly finance and economics academics or someone who in other ways feels reputationally invested in the old theories. So when I talk about old theories, it's important for me to be precise in what I mean. First of all, it's the macrofinance. So you can think about DSG models, consumption CAPM, and utility theory. This is something that I had to study quite extensively myself. So I've seen many of the gross oversimplification and in some cases logical inconsistencies to see that it doesn't work. So it's no surprise to me that we have many asset pricing puzzles. I would say it's more puzzling why people continue to spend so much time and energy on these things. And it's also interesting that one of the very famous academic macroeconomists, Paul Romer, once he quit academia, came out and said that all of this mainstream macro theory is basically bullshit. I wish that more academics would be frank in this way and talk about it directly, because of course many of them know that it's not really useful in reality. Second, it's the CAPM mean variance and elliptical distributions, as if they have anything to do with the real world. And then finally you have the Black-Litterman model, which I view as duct tape engineering of all of the above combined with some pseudo-Bayesian perspectives. So this is something that I think is a really bad model that I wouldn't recommend for anyone to use in any way. So the way I see it, the big issue with most of these theories is that they are exactly wrong, in the sense that they are very sloppy in the fundamental assumptions that they make in a very careless way, and then they are very rigorous about the details afterwards. But it doesn't really matter how rigorous you are in a world that is very far from the one that we live in. So what we want to be doing instead is to be approximately correct, in the sense that we care a lot about having the fundamental assumptions being sound, and then we allow for heuristics and approximations in the details when necessary. Of course, if we can, we want to be exactly correct, but in most of finance economics, the best that we could hope for is probably being approximately correct. We also want to have a scientific approach, and what I mean by this is to constantly question the existing theories and methods to see where we still lack understanding and where we can improve. What we don't want to be doing is to engage in anti-science, which is the complete opposite, and a continued justification of methods and theories that have obvious disagreements with reality. So this is what I see in finance economics as it is right now. The scientific approach also means that you as a reader should question the things that I write and come with suggestions for how we can improve it. Because in the best case, we will find a better solution, make the framework even better, and in the worst case, we're just going to conclude that this is a topic for future research that we don't know how to solve as it is right now. The important point is that the feedback should be scientific also. So let's say if you come and say something like, oh well, but Siva does not agree with the utility theory definition of risk aversion. Then I'm going to say something like, well, since utility theory doesn't agree with reality, I see it as a feature and not as a bug. So the important point is that it should be a issue that you see in the real world and not some conceptual problem that you might think that there is. I would also say that with all this finance economics, there seems to be a general lack of common sense understanding or reasoning, because if you have a risk measure which is focused on minimizing expected large losses, and you say that that is not risk averse while square deviation from the mean are, then quite obviously there is something wrong with the definition of risk aversion. And I guarantee you that if you go out and ask people on the street what they think is investment risk, if it's large losses or square deviations from the mean, then the vast majority would say large losses. Okay, so while this book is being written, you have the opportunity to get early access through a crowdfunding campaign. And you will also have access to some supporting Python code and a community forum where you can ask questions and I will give you answers, and you also can have a dialogue with the other campaign backers. If you happen to be among top 10 backers once the book is published, you will also have access to an institutional grade implementation of the framework from the book for 3 months, where you can really test out your understanding of the new methods. If you want to have a sneak peek of the book, you can find it here on SSRN, and this is something that I will constantly update with small pieces from the book, but all the main and really interesting new content will of course only be available to campaign backers. This book will naturally build on my articles, but compared to how they are right now, there will be a much more careful and pedagogical walkthrough of all of the details, so that it makes it even easier for you to understand. There will also be an element that clearly explains how all of this is actually one big system. And then finally, of course, there will be new content on how you should think about investment and risk management, and some perspectives on risk simulation that will be completely new, which you cannot find in the content that I have out right now. So I will be posting about this book in the Applied Quantitative Investment Management group, which I encourage you to join. If you have other questions about this campaign, you're of course also very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn.